right, welcome to today's program. It's Med, Not Meds, Healthy Eating the Mediterranean Way. And so today's presentation is taught by Alice Burchak, and she's the Extension Agent up in Toole County. So welcome, Alice, and welcome everybody who is here today. Thanks for joining us. You can go ahead and go, Alice. I'm not hearing you.
Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
I am, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. Program that I accidentally came across from North Carolina Extension, and it was called Med Instead of Meds. So it was focusing on eating the Mediterranean style diet, and eating like those who live in the Mediterranean region has been shown to promote health and decrease the risk of chronic disease. The modern Mediterranean style of eating includes foods that add protective factors to our diet, and it reduces the occurrence of cardiovascular and diabetes too. The folks at the NC Extension program often refer to this diet as PANS instead of pills to prevent chronic disease. We all have seen that old food pyramid, and this was the food pyramid for Mediterranean diet. It comes from an organization called Old Ways, which North Carolina actually built their program off of. But if we look at it in the food pyramid, the Mediterranean diet is a plant-based diet. And so every day we want to include foods that come from plants in our diet, which include fruits and vegetables, whole grains, vegetable oils, and nuts and nuts. And all those things have protective factors in the nutrition. So when we eat them, we receive protective factors in our body. So those are things that we want to eat every day. We want to eat lots of fruits and vegetables and that type of stuff every day. Then the Mediterranean way includes lean protein, and you want to kind of look at eating that 2 or 3 times a week. And lean protein are things like seafood and white poultry meat. And so that has a lot of the healthy fats in it. And the Mediterranean is based on, it's not a low fat diet, but it's a diet based on eating healthy fats. And so the seafood and the poultry add the healthy fats into our diet. Eating a little less often, maybe once a week or daily if you eat small portions, or things like yogurt and cheese and eggs, and dark poultry meat, because it's a little higher. It's not as lean as the white chicken meat. So we might want to look at consuming those things maybe on a weekly basis. And then what the Mediterranean diet really discourages is sugar intake and processed food, refined grains. And so we want to eat those as little as possible. And then red meat, and red meat is kind of a thing that you get to eat maybe once a month or something, but it's a delicacy, and we want to not try to eat so much red meat. For us extension workers that kind of enjoy a glass of wine once in a while, the Mediterranean diet is great because you're encouraged to consume a glass of wine a day, because it also has those protective factors in it, and then lots and lots of water. So those more comfortable with the MyPlate, however, that pyramid and transitioned into a MyPlate version. And it looks very, very similar to the other MyPlate. And we still want to have half our plates with fruits and vegetables. And eating the rainbow is still encouraged because you get all kinds of different benefits from the different colored vegetables. We want to eat whole grains as much as possible. In MyPlate, they encourage half our diet in grains. In the Mediterranean diet, you're encouraged that to eat whole grains. So you want wheat bread that is 100% and that type of thing. But even better yet, it's better to eat the whole grain itself. So eating things like quinoa and whole oatmeal that's not processed up and those type of things. We want to look at a healthy protein that's lean. And so we talked about only eating fish and chicken maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So the other days when you're eating protein, you want to look at plant-based proteins such as beans and nuts. And then we want to consume healthy oils. And so in the Mediterranean diet, it's mainly olive oil and canola oil because they're easy to purchase and they have those protective factors in them. So we want to look at that. And we always, and we want to limit our animal fat as much as possible. And I'll talk about that a little bit in another slide. Part of eating Medway. So if you look at this slide, there on the left-hand side is more complex carbohydrates, and then it continues through the right to refined and processed foods. So with the Med diet, we want to concentrate on eating those fruits, vegetables, and legumes, and the unprocessed grains, and then maybe a little bit less of the lightly processed grains. And then further down, when you come to more refined and processed foods, you really want to start eating less and less of those. And potatoes and corn are vegetables that don't have the protective factors, so it would be important to try to substitute green vegetables and those type of things instead of eating potatoes and corn. And then refined bread, a piece of whole bread can raise your blood sugar just as much as a candy bar because the refined bread really makes your blood sugar spike. And then, of course, we really want to try to avoid the foods that have high sugar, like baked goods and soft drinks. Based protein. And we want to eat those on a daily basis. And then white meat, poultry, 2 or 3 times a week. And then eggs and dairy, we can look at smaller amounts daily, or maybe just once a week as not more than that. Going to eat red meat, and as Dr. Koch actually less than eating red meat. And then just as we go through, we really want to avoid the highly processed meat. So that bacon's a tough one, isn't it? But we probably want to try to avoid those things. Mediterranean style of eating has been shown to promote health and decrease the risk of many chronic diseases. So these are some facts or some information that the North Carolina Extension pulled out. But the Med way of eating has research has provided us information that it may decrease risk of some forms of cancer. It is more effective for low-fat weight loss in overweight and obese individuals. And I'll talk a little bit about the fat, but the higher fat content really helps keep people feel full and satisfied. And so that's part of the reason. It protects against cognitive decline by protecting the small blood vessels in the brain. And a study has shown that 40%, there's a 40% developed in Alzheimer's when you eat the Med way. It may improve your eyes, the risk of macular degeneration. Decrease in type 2 diabetes has been researched. There was a 52% decrease in the diabetes too when you eat in Medway. It can help manage blood pressure, and it can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease as much as 30 to 60%. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to introduce you to the Meds Instead of Med website, and the research that backs up this slide is all in that website, and I'll show you where that is. So the Mediterranean diet is really just kind of tweaking the way we eat, and it's fairly simple to transition into a Mediterranean diet. But just with any other diet, if you are planning on changing the way you eat, you'd want to discuss it with your physician before you chose to proceed with that. All right, so one of the first steps in transitioning into the Mediterranean diet is to change the protein that you're eating currently. So you want to look at replacing the meat in your diet with plant proteins and seeds and nuts on a daily basis. You'll want to use some lean protein on 2 to 3 times a week to replace some of that meat that might not be as lean. And we'll look at, eating white poultry as well. You want to limit your red meat or choose lean red meat. And we really want to greatly either limit or eliminate processed meats. Swapping your fats is, it's not something that we're normally used to using olive oil for almost everything, but it's pretty easy to do. You can replace butter and margarine. You can use that on your toast and it's really yummy. We can use olive oil for cooking or put it in dressings or marinades. It's pretty versatile. It's also flavorful, so it really adds a lot of flavor to our recipes. When we look at fats, there's unsaturated, saturated, and trans fat. We want to stay on the unsaturated side of the equation, and unsaturated fats normally come from plants and seafood. So looking at eating things like salmon and nuts and beans and that olive oil and avocados and those type of things are really, they have those protective factors that help our body combat those chronic diseases. As you transition into saturated fats, they do not promote the good chemicals and stuff in our body, so they don't help as much. So we want to limit those foods. We don't necessarily have to cut them out, but we want to limit them. And then we don't want to eat trans fats at all, because it has been shown that trans fats are harmful to our bodies. And then oftentimes the question is asked about mayonnaise and where it fits in that continuum, but it just depends on what it's made of. If it's an olive oil based mayonnaise, you know, it's more unsaturated. If it's a soy oil based, it's more. And so you kind of just have to read your labels. And I think every diet in the world tells us to eat more vegetables. So we want to really stock up on that, and we get the fiber and the nutrients, and we want to eat at least 3 servings a day, but the more the better, and that variety of color is really important. And then dark leafy greens really have a lot of phytochemicals that really help us too. So looking at collards, kale, spinach, those type of things are really the better. Remember, when we looked at the plate, you want a plate filled with vegetables, but you want more vegetables than fruit. Also, we want to increase our intake of fruit and have at least 2 servings a day with a variety of colors. And berries are often recommended because they're lower in sugar, so they're lower in carbs. So, but just remember a variety of colors and making sure you get at least 2 servings per snack. Our nuts and seeds are great for snacks. Low fat diet are often discouraged to eat things like avocados and nuts and those and seeds, but they are a power punch with great chemicals that help our bodies, and they're really healthy for us to eat. So you want to eat a handful of nuts. You don't want to eat a whole bag or whatever. So you want to be conscious of the amount you eat, but you want to include nuts and seeds in your diet every day. Making sure that we eat whole grains possible. We want to choose things like oatmeal and quinoa and brown rice, and make sure that whole is the first ingredient on our ingredient list, and really concentrate on getting those whole grains. I think we've been saying this since I started an extension, but rethink your sweets, and you really want to limit your sugar intake. And there's a great graphic on the website I wanted to show you guys that I think is really useful when educating clientele. But you really want to keep your sweets down. One study shows that 50% of American sugar comes from soft drinks, and then just remembering those desserts and those things. So with those 7 steps, pretty easy to transition into the med way of eating. The med way is really simple. It's a whole ingredients that are you can purchase in most grocery stores. They're easy to prepare. They're delicious because we're using a lot of vegetables and fruits that taste well, plus we're using olive oil, what really adds the flavor. And then I always mess this word up, satiety factor, but the Mediterranean diet is satisfying. It keeps our stomach full, so we're not often wanting to eat, and we're feeling full all the time. So these are the resources that I used, and I'm going to take us to the Med Instead of Meds site pretty soon. but then there's the Old Ways site that I mentioned. Healthy Eating Plate, the link is there for that. And then I included an article about studies supporting the Mediterranean diet. But it might take me a sec, but I'd like to take us to. So bear with me. Now it doesn't want to go, Caitlin. See this?
I was still seeing your PowerPoint, but I could see the website right behind it. So right now I see a gray screen. I think it's just going to take a few moments like last time.
Okay, so just wait a sec.
I would. That's what it seems like. We did try this out before the program. I promise everyone.
I think I remember. I might have to close the PowerPoint and open it again because it seems like if I click on it, then it didn't want to. Is it going?
No, I just see your PowerPoint, and now I see the gray box.
Okay, hold on a sec. Oh, the practicing sometimes, huh? And I forgot to put my phone on silent.
Would you like to tell us about the website while it's starting to load, or in case it doesn't load?
Yeah. So
Oh, there it is. It's now there.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, yep, I can. Your picture was in my way. So, all right. So this is the Meds website, which was developed by North Carolina Extension. And so it has all the information I just presented to you, but it also has recipes, and there's some great recipes there. And then the science about eating with med, but the research is actually in this webinar over here. If you click on the webinar, and it's about an hour long, but there's a great amount of research in it. And this program was developed by an agent there named Carolyn Dunn, and it's her presentation. It's really great. It also has this tips and tools. And it actually has some really great graphics that have like posters that are easy to print out about the 7 simple choices. And then it has like an olive oil guide and some of that information. But what I really loved about it was at the bottom. Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to show you the sweets thing. Because I think this is a great graphic too. So can you guys see that? But it's about how sugar makes us sick.
Yes, I see that.
So that's a great graphic. And then the one that I thought was useful for us is this Eating the Medway handout, and you can print it out yourself and send it to a printer. It has all the information in a really nice graphic way and easy to understand and see. And then it has kind of a recommendation on how much you should eat a day of each item and what you should limit. And then it has a sample daily menu with a menu on things, for lunch, dinner, and snack and that type of thing. So I thought that was a really great resource. So, and that wraps up my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
All right. While you think about the questions, I'm going to open up the poll to give us a little bit of feedback on the program. Let me get that opened up. That's the bad news about sharing the poll, is that you have to switch from the presenter and you can't have it ready. So here we go. All right. So go ahead and complete that for us, and it just gives us a little bit of feedback. So Alice, is this something that you've adopted in your life or tried to focus a little bit more on the whatever it is? As I said it 5 times, I said it before. Is this something that you've tried to incorporate?
I really, the last year and a half, I've really worked hard to incorporate it. Here at my mom's house, it's been a little tougher because they're pretty traditional eaters, but I really have worked on it, and and I've seen some decreases in my blood indicators and that
Mhm.
type of. But I just feel a lot better too. I'm amazed how much different I feel. So,
Yeah. Sometimes we just don't listen to what our bodies likes or doesn't like. So,
and I started out with this incorporating. I did a healthy eating workshop with the Instant Pot, and that's where
mhm,
I came across this. And so I incorporated this with some recipes, like
mhm.
salmon and asparagus and some of those things, and did a workshop on it. So, and that went over fairly well. So.